Welcome back. I hope you enjoyed the prologue. If you've jumped into the Vampiro series with this video slash podcast, go back, read the prologue first, or listen to it, watch it, and then come on back here and watch and listen to the first chapter. So here we go. Chapter 1, Tom Gallagher. On a balmy Wednesday night, Tom Gallagher gazed out of the floor-to-ceiling windows of his 14th floor office at Sangue Sciences in Century City, the weight of his impending decision gnawing at his conscience. Below, the city teemed with life despite the late hour. Cars crawled along the illuminated streets, their headlights shimmering off the glass facades of the towering buildings. Workers continued their hustle inside the monoliths lining the Avenue of the Stars, while Tom stood motionless, locked in a silent battle within himself. The shadows that fell across the office deepened, mirroring the dark thoughts swirling in his mind. The upgrades to his home, a sprawling estate he'd no longer afford, had put everything at risk. His wife's unbridled spending habits, luxury bags, high-end vacations, and all the trappings of a life he had no longer had the financial means to sustain, had spiraled them into suffocating debt. A threatening letter from his bank had pushed him past the brink. His heart pounded as he thought about what was about to happen, the chain of events he had set in motion months ago. They had approached him in secret, shadowy men with deep pockets and no names, offering to buy classified information on Sangue Sciences' most sensitive projects. He had resisted at first, a mixture of pride and fear driving him to refuse their offers. But pride did not pay the bills, and fear could not stave off financial ruin. When the creditors came calling and the threat of losing everything loomed too close, Tom relented. His pride had crumbled, but his guilt only grew. For weeks, he had carefully played both sides, keeping the buyers at bay while collecting small sums to keep his family afloat. But now the buyers were done waiting. They wanted results, and they were clear. Tonight would be his last chance. His hand shook slightly as he reached for his keys on his desk. He closed his eyes, trying to dispel the overwhelming sense of betrayal that clawed at his insides. The Vampiati family had given him everything: his career, trust, and friendship. They had pulled him from obscurity a decade ago, placing him in a charge of security at one of Los Angeles' most prestigious biotech firms. They treated him like one of their own, and now he was about to repay them with the ultimate treachery. His family, their future, and the life he had built were at stake. Yet more profound, but yet a more profound fear lurked within him. He couldn't articulate. What if this betrayal invited something darker than mere financial ruin? This information seemed useless. Locking the door to his office, he walked past rows of cubicles, the blue lights from computer monitors casting ghostly reflections in the glass. For a brief moment, he caught his own reflection, a tall, striking man with broad shoulders and a youthful face that belied the turmoil beneath. He had spent years building his reputation here, crafting that life that from the outside seemed perfect: a devoted father, a loving husband, and a successful professional. But beneath the surface, the cracks had long been forming. As he boarded the elevator and pressed the button for the second level basement, Tom's mind drifted to the Vampiati family. Their legacy stretched back centuries, and rumors swirled about their influence over Los Angeles' power players. There were whispers about old money and old alliances, perhaps older than anyone dared to imagine. Tom had dismissed the story for years, but the old tale seemed less like fiction as he neared the precipice of his betrayal. It all felt strangely effortless over the past 8 months, as if Tom had been unwittingly casted in a thriller, the kind where the plot twisted with every step he took. He hadn't planned on being the villain, but here he was, walking deeper into the shadows with every calculated move. His role in this was simple: memorize passwords while peering over Tom McConnell's shoulder, the IT guy who never suspected a thing. It had been far too easy. Tom had memorized the keystrokes the first time he watched McConnell log in, feeling an unexpected thrill at how simple it was to gain access to the restricted files. Then came the memory stick. 3 months ago, after a long day at the office, a man approached him as Tom pulled into his driveway, stepping away from the shadows like a ghost. He didn't say a word, just handed Tom a sleek glass memory stick wrapped in a small package, then disappeared into the night without a trace. For 2 weeks, the IT department had been practically empty after hours. No one stayed late. Their absence was almost too convenient. Colleagues chatted openly about their evenings off, their voices filled with casual confidence, as if they were challenging fate. The stars had aligned perfectly. No one would see him. The perfect plan, the ideal timing. It felt too orchestrated, too flawless, like someone was pulling the strings, and Tom was merely a puppet dancing to a tune he didn't fully understand. The elevator doors slid open, and Tom stepped into a long white hallway, his footsteps muted against the polished floors. Ahead, his heart tightened at seeing Bill Foreman, the computer lab's security guard, and a friend. Bill wasn't just any hire, he was Tom's best decision. A reliable guy, solid through and through. He had been with the company for years, and more importantly, was trusted by the Vampiati family. If anyone was a gatekeeper, it was Bill. He approached. Tom felt dryness in his throat. Bill's easy smile greeted him, as always, but tonight, that familiar look twisted the knife of guilt even deeper. Bill had no idea what Tom was about to do. "Hey, Bill," Tom hesitated. "You always seem to be on the night shift. You should switch off with Hannah occasionally and get some more time with your family." "I'm due for a shift change next week," Bill said, smiling. Tom put his cell phone, watch, and keys into a small tray, slid them over to Bill, and walked through the metal detector. "We're trying to do 90 days at a time to address the sleep issues." Bill checked his watch. "You're leaving late tonight." With the end of the quarter approaching, I've been overwhelmed with reports to write up. I'm making my last rounds here, then heading home. "I'll be here when you get back." Bill handed him over the tray full of his belongings. Tom's heart raced as he moved down the stark, empty hallway. The echo of his footsteps loud in his mind. The routine at the backup power generator felt like the calm before the storm. He paused and took a breath. Inside, the quiet hum of the machinery was stark in contrast to the turmoil within him. 3 minutes ticked by in silence, his pulse keeping time with the watch on his wrist, the longest of his life. When the time was up, he stepped back into the hall, the door clicking shut behind him. He could feel the weight of the moment pressed down on him, yet he kept his gaze averted from Bill. No need to stir suspicion with unnecessary conversation. Bill was a friend, but he wasn't part of this. Tom couldn't afford any distractions. The server room was next. The familiar routine played out again. Security card reader, the door releasing with a soft click, and Tom stepping inside. The cold, sterile air inside the server farm felt even more suffocating as he approached Tom McConnell's workstation. His hands moved with precision, entering the stolen password with practice ease. The screen came to life, and Tom worked quickly, navigating the complicated system to retrieve what he had come for. The files weren't easy to find, but after months of preparation, he knew exactly where to look. Every click brought him closer to the point of no return. His hands trembled slightly as he inserted the glass memory stick, the monitor glow reflecting off the sleek surface. The transfer was complete in seconds, but those seconds felt like hours. After copying the files, he removed the stick and tucked it into a small piece of bubble wrap he'd brought for protection, sliding into his pocket as if it was a shard of glass ready to shatter. Deleting the session history came next, erasing his digital footprints. Everything had to be perfect. The enormity of what he was doing hit him again as he stood up and wiped his brow. A bead of sweat clung to his forehead, betraying the calm exterior he tried to maintain. It was done. The files were his, and now came the hardest part, leaving as if nothing had happened. "This job is getting monotonous," Tom said as he approached the security station. Maybe someday we'll drill a hole in one of the walls, sneak in, and steal all these blood protocols. Oh, you mean like Ocean's 11? Bill asked. That would be even better, some real intrigue. But I don't recall anyone drilling a hole. Tom dropped everything back into the tray and walked through the metal detector. The alarm went off. Tom stiffened and turned towards Bill, pretending to be surprised. Your watch, Bill pointed at his arm. Right. Tom stepped back through the detector, removed his watch, and handed it to Bill. He stepped through again without issue. See you in the morning, Bill said cheerfully. Have a good night. Tom took the elevator to the parking garage 2 floors above. After the doors closed, he let out a long sigh and rubbed his eyes with shaky hands. My God, what have I done? He hurried to his SUV and climbed in. After checking all the mirrors and surroundings, he started the engine and drove off. He left the parking garage and turned right onto the Avenue of the Stars towards Santa Monica Boulevard. Once on the 405, he headed south towards Long Beach and the San Pedro exit. After Tom exited the security area, Bill's gaze followed him until the elevator doors closed. A profound melancholy settled within him, causing his eyes to drift towards the table. He glanced back towards the hallway where Tom had disappeared moments earlier, wondering what would happen next. It had been 2 weeks since a mysterious stranger handed him the encrypted cell phone in Sangue parking lot garage while commuting to work. Bill remained clueless about the man's identity or how he had foreseen Tom's late departure that night. The stranger insisted on being a part of a government-affiliated investigation team, a claim Bill dismissed as utter nonsense. However, Bill's skepticism waned when the stranger rewarded him with an envelope containing $10,000 for a seemingly effortless task. The stranger had never revealed what they were after, only that Bill needed to make the call after Tom left. He retrieved the cell phone from his pocket and hit the speed dial. It rang twice. Yes, a deep voice said on the other end. He just left. The call disconnected immediately, and Bill returned the phone to his pocket. With the call made, Bill wasn't sure what he had just set into motion. He only hoped he hadn't just betrayed his friend and himself for a price he couldn't live with later. Yuri is on the move. It was a call Sophia Russo dreaded the most. It meant hours of continuous observation, cold sandwiches, stale coffee, and eye drops. She'd been assigned to the stakeout on and off for the past 2 years. When the club's security camera spotted Yuri Petrov, or one of his agents at the dock, Sophia was the first to get the call and begin the routine all over again. She knew she would spend the next several nights watching and waiting for anything out of the ordinary. During the day, Ryan Kent would relieve her, doubling as a fisherman on a 40-foot Hatteras provided by the agency. Ryan would stay in the cabin most of the time, occasionally coming on deck to ensure he was seen working on his fishing gear. Thanks, John, you've made my day, she said sarcastically. Where is he? Yuri Petrov was head of the Russian FSB station in Los Angeles, one of the replacement agencies of the old KGB. The American government knew they were up to something. The CIA assets embedded in Northrop Grumman were watching Yuri's associates communicate with several unwitting Northrop employees, a typical long-term recruiting effort. Sophia knew the pattern, which was a standard operation on the part of the Russians. At the yacht, Yuri arrived several cohorts about 30 minutes ago. Looks like he plans on spending the night, John said. Okay, I'm on my way. Sophia jumped in the shower, got dressed, and grabbed her pre-packed bag, which she always had prepared. 45 minutes later, she parked her car in its usual spot at the Cabrillo Yacht Club in Long Beach. The club, a 1980s two-story building, was a colonial-style white clubhouse with a double-door entrance and pillars holding up a portico. Behind the club were several docks and hundreds of boats, all neatly tucked away in their slips. 2 weeks ago, Sophia had been on watch when 2 of Yuri's men had a party on board the yacht. A long night of nothing but hookers and delivery men coming and going. This time she was prepared for a more extended evening, with Yuri being there himself. So she settled in, raised her digital binoculars, and focused on the upper level, where she was sure she would eventually see some activity. 3 hours later, her eyes burned from overfocusing. Sophia was distracted by an SUV enter the parking lot near the club's front entrance. She thought nothing of it until she glanced at it again and noticed no one was getting out, and the engine was still running. She turned her binoculars to the vehicle and zoomed in on the driver. Tom had arrived at the appointed time and sat in his car for several minutes, looking around for anything that seemed out of place. The parking lot appeared deserted. Next to him on the seat was a cigarette pack containing the bubble wrap memory stick. He reached over, picked it up, and exited the car. Then he walked toward the club's entrance, nervously glancing from side to side. Tom spotted a trash can outside the double doors, exactly where his contact had said it would be. Dropping it in was his final task, his money shot, the kiss of betrayal. Reaching the trash can seemed to take forever. Finally, after a few steps, the moment was upon him. He held his hand over the top and dropped the pack into the hole. For a brief moment, he stared into the darkness, wanting to reach in and take it back. But instead, he turned and entered the club. Sophia watched him go through the motions of a dead drop, snapping several photos of the incident. She lowered her binoculars and scowled. She hadn't seen that move in years, and it was so obvious the guy was an amateur that it was laughable. Who the hell is that guy? She wondered out loud. Questions raced through her mind, raising new concerns. The man who had just entered the club was off the agency's radar. He was unrecognizable, definitely not from Northrop, and he just made a dead drop right in front of her. Sophia stared at the club doors until another man, a janitor with a roll of plastic bags, came out. She brought her binoculars up and watched him remove the trash bag and replace it with a new one. He put the entire load in a wheelbarrow-style utility cart and pushed it over to a chain-link gate that secured the dock entrance to the marina. He punched a code into the security keypad and buzzed himself in. Holding back the heavy cart, he struggled down the ramp. At the bottom, he moved from one boat slip to the next, emptying each trash can and dropping in a new bag. Sophia's senses were on high alert. Something was happening right now. She opened her car door and stepped out, her long legs encased in a skin-tight black jumpsuit that zipped up the front, with a standard issue CIA Glock 22 strapped to her back. Very nice, Sergei Orlov muttered, his thick Russian accent curling around the words. Sometimes the job had its perks. He stepped from behind the woman's car after attaching a magnetic tracking device to the underside. He moved stealthily to a nearby tree, where he stashed his high-power camera earlier. From there, he zoomed in and snapped several shots of her face and backside, his grin widening as he admired the subject matter. Sophia watched the janitor approach the Russian yacht. At its mooring slip, the man opened a trash can, pulled out a full bag, and tossed it into his utility cart. But instead of replacing it with a fresh plastic liner, he substituted the filled trash bag he'd taken from the club entrance and moved on to the next boat. Sophia lowered her binoculars, feeling frustrated and confused. Her mind raced. Who was the asset, and what had he delivered to Yuri and his men? What did she miss? Was Yuri after something? 2 years of work and the agency was not even looking in the right place? It seemed impossible. Were they cleverly misdirected all this time, or was Yuri bluffing to throw them off? She rolled the possibilities around in her head. One of Yuri's men walked down the gangway from the yacht with another bag of trash. He opened the container at the mooring and traded one full bag for another. After a glance around the docks, he walked back up the gangway to the yacht and vanished. Sophia had seen enough. Determination on her face, she strode back towards her car. But before she got too close, she detoured to check the license plate, make, and model of the SUV the carrier had driven. She looked in the driver's side window, observing the details. Nothing on the seats, the floor, or the dashboard. The interior was spotless. She snapped several pictures and headed back to her car. Now she faced a decision. Should she wait and follow the man when he leaves the club? That might risk someone seeing her. Should she enter the club and confront the man directly? That would certainly raise a red flag with the Russians and jeopardize the operation. She needed to determine who the drop man was. This parking lot was not the safest place to call in and retrieve more intel. She felt like a sitting duck. Sophia still hesitated. Her greatest strength as a CIA agent was tracking down details that would send most others spiraling down an endless tangent. She loved the thrill and challenge of the puzzles and the players. After 12 years with the agency, she had become one of the best field operators on the West Coast. Recruited from a think tank and trained at Langley, Sophia Russo was now 35 and addicted to the job. After several minutes and no further activity, she decided it would be better to leave than to stay. If she was going to call in, she wanted to do it away from any prying eyes. She started her car and pulled away. As she exited the lot, Sergei Orlov stepped out from behind the tree and snapped several more pictures, zooming the high-powered lens in on the camera side to get a clear shot of her sharp features, perfect smile, and smooth skin. Once she was gone, he took a burner cell from a secret pocket in his pant leg and typed in a message. The package was retrieved. CIA agent on the scene. He touched the send and put the phone away. With the camera over his shoulder, he walked towards the dock to report to the team. So far, he had a very successful evening serving both his employers, one known and the other a complete mystery. Sophia navigated the dimly lit streets, her fingers gripping the steering wheel as she took a right onto Minor Street. At the far end of the marina loomed ahead, the boat swaying in its dark water. She pulled into a secluded lot, killed the engine, and reached for her phone. Jillian, it's Sophia. I need you to run some plates for me. She rattled off the license number and waited, tapping her fingers against the steering wheel. The overhead street lamps illuminated the lot, and their low hum filled the silence as she waited. A few minutes later, Jillian returned. Sophia frowned. You're sure? She sat up straight, the response catching her off guard. Can you pull up anything else besides the address? There was a pause. All right, keep looking. Call me if you find any more. She exhaled and sank back into her seat, her mind spinning. The name meant nothing to her, yet the weight of the revelation pressed against her chest. Who the hell was Lisa Gallagher?